Thank you. So I'm a TEDx virgin. I'm a first-time speaker, first-time attendee, and I've never actually watched any TED Talks before, believe it or not. So I actually had to go online and see what this is all about. So this is really exciting, and it's really exciting that I got to follow up with, Elsa's "Let It Go." My kids have watched that thing like 1,000 times. So I was literally standing over here singing in my head, and I won't lie, I watched every single one of you, and all of you were bopping your head and singing along. There were a couple of you that I think knew all the words, so that's pretty awesome. So, after that uplifting song, which was fantastic, I'm going to go ahead and kill your spirits and talk about cancer. And as Alan said, I grew up here in Vancouver. I'm a Vancouverite through and through. I'm a huge Canucks fan. I was almost melted when I saw Mark. I'm a huge coffee snob. I both love and I hate the rain, and I love to complain about Toronto. I love Vancouver, but as Alan was saying, I live in San Diego now. Sunny San Diego, it's awesome. There's SeaWorld and Legoland and all that stuff, great for the kids. But it's not Vancouver, and I miss Vancouver. And really, the only thing that keeps me in San Diego is my job. I love my job. And I love my job because, I get to wake up every day and go to work and put in a hard day's work and feel like I've made a difference in somebody's life because, I work in cancer research. And I work for this really cool, young, vibrant, innovative company that's developing these new, exciting technologies to treat cancer. And that's really cool, and I think that's really exciting. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. And what's even more rewarding for me is that I got to be one of the founding employees for this company that I work for. And I founded it with my best friend, Puneet Dhillon, who also is from Vancouver, who also is actually at another TED Talk in West Vancouver. And so, it was really cool, really exciting for us to be able to do that. This picture, because this is actually where it all began. Back in 2011, we moved to San Diego, and another company was, gracious enough to give us this, if you can call it an office space. It was actually a storage space with boxes everywhere and a tiny table. And we sat down, and with our computers and our papers and our phones, and we just started working. We worked our tails off, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing if we were going to have a paycheck the next day, not knowing if this company was going to last, a year or let alone another week. So you can imagine back in 2011, I'm super excited. I want to go tell my family all about this new venture I'm going to take on with my best friend. I'm going to cure cancer. I'm going to find all these new technologies that are going to make patients' lives better. So I'm sitting here, I'm telling my family all this stuff. And then my oldest brother looks at me, and he looks me dead in the eye, and he says, "Don't you know they've already cured cancer?" And I look at him and go, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then he looks at me with a serious look, and he says, "Well, yeah, the pharmaceutical companies, they've already cured cancer. They're just hiding it from us. It's a conspiracy with the government. And they've already cured it, and they just want us to keep paying for these crappy drugs that don't work so they can keep lining their pockets with money." And I looked at him again, and I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And as misguided as my brother is, the scariest thing, or maybe not the scariest thing, but the truth is that he's not the only one that thinks this. He's not the only one that believes this. This is out there. In my short career in cancer research, people from all walks of life have come to me and said basically the same thing. And, chances are, because I actually see a few people nodding their head as I say this, chances are there might be a few people in this audience that believe it, or they've heard it, or somebody has told them, yeah, they found the cure of cancer. There's a huge government conspiracy. And what I want to tell you today, if you're here, I want to tell you, we haven't discovered a miracle cure to cancer. We haven't discovered a miracle cure that will cure all cancers, because the fact is cancers are different. You have breast cancer, you have colon cancer, you have prostate cancer, brain cancer. They all come from different tissues. They all react differently to therapies. So to think that we can have a miracle drug, one single drug that be able to cure all cancers of all the world, I think that's an absurd notion. But I don't blame anybody for really trying to believe that and wanting to believe it. Because it's a romantic thing. It's a romantic notion to believe that that's out there, because cancer is an incredibly terrible disease. Right? I'm sure if I look and did a poll in this room right now, everybody here is probably, or someday will be affected by cancer. I have. So I don't blame you. I don't blame these people for thinking that we have some kind of cure and there's some kind of conspiracy and there's some bad person out there that's trying to hide it from us. Because, in reality, we're losing the fight with cancer right now. We have more people today diagnosed with cancer than we ever have been. And I looked at a study that was done by a group in the UK, the UK Cancer Society, and they did a study in 2012, and they found that there were 14.1 million new cases of cancer diagnosed that year. And even worse than that, there were over 8 million deaths that occurred because of cancer that year. And that's scary. And it's not what so I apologize. I'm not here to just kind of crush your souls and tell you how terrible cancer is. But I mean, I'm just kind of stating the obvious here, right? It's not good, and we need to find a solution. But what I am here to talk to you about is that we know more about cancer today than we've ever known before. And I'm really excited, and I love my job because we're really in a time of cancer research and developing these new cancer therapies that I think everybody should be excited about, because change is coming. Change is coming, where before, when you think about cancer treatment, you think about surgery, you think about radiation, you think about chemotherapy, and these things are toxic and devastating, not just to the person taking that drug, but it's devastating to their families as well, to see their loved one go through this pain, not just from the cancer, but also from the therapy. So we know more about cancer than we know today, and we are getting there. We're getting there. We're finding new therapies that can possibly be safer, more effective, and make patients' lives better. So really, cancer is a pretty complicated disease, right? It's not like a cold. You can't catch it like the common cold. It's not a dormant disease. It's active, and it's living, and it really is a disease of self. And what I mean by cancer being a disease of self is that it's a disease that's born out of us. It's a disease that starts from our own cells, from one cell mutating or two cells mutating a couple times, and then it starts to grow uncontrollably, and then it becomes relentless. And if you leave it to its own devices, it will eventually kill you. But really, this kind of stuff happens all the time in our body. That's kind of the circle of life here. Our cells, they divide all the time, all of us. We're made up of millions of cells, and our cells will divide and multiply and replicate, and sometimes our cells make mistakes, and the DNA gets damaged, and that's called a mutation. That's what happens. And when those mutations happen, generally our body is really good at dealing with that stuff. So either a cell mutates, and it dies almost immediately because it can't handle, or it's not able to survive because of that mutation, or it is able to survive, but our body has this amazing tool, this amazing defense mechanism called the immune system that's able to recognize that cell and go in and kill it on its own. So this is happening all the time. And, we have these cells that are dividing and then they mutate because, we're exposing ourselves to carcinogens like, UV radiation and other chemicals and things like that. It's just the fact of life and it happens. But, we're not all spontaneously popping tumors everywhere. So we have an amazing system called the immune system that protects us from this kind of thing. But this is the crazy part about cancer, and this is the thing we've learned about cancer over the last 20 or 30 years, is that the way the cancer survives in our body is that it's learned how to hide from our immune system. It's figured out ways through all the mutations it goes through to hide and cloak itself from all the little molecular and biological mechanisms that the immune system generally uses to try and find the cancer and kill it. So then it's able to subsist and exist in our body and thrive using our body's other systems and continue to grow and eventually take over if it's left alone. So, let's take a little demo, because I don't want to get too deep into like the science of the immune system and cancer and all that stuff. So what I'm going to ask for is a couple volunteers. Anybody? All right, you? And I'll take Kevin, come on up. Come on. Okay. So first of all, my wife is a lawyer, so I'm going to have to tell you guys are on TV, so say hello to the folks out in the interweb there. This is your disclaimer and waiver. Okay, so these guys are going to be my two cells, okay? And, sorry, what's your name?
Darren.
Darren. This is Darren, everybody. This is actually my brother-in-law, Kevin. Kevin, say hi. He's supporting me. He's really, really nice. So Darren's going to be our normal cell, okay? Darren, you're going to hold this up. Well, you won't hold anything up yet. Kevin's going to be our immune cell. Okay, Kevin's our immune cell here. And Darren's just a normal cell hanging out, chilling out, doing his thing. And, you know, something happens. There's some kind of, I don't know, freak radiation accident, and he mutates and becomes a mutated cell. Hold that up. So now, what happens is that something mutates in Darren's cell, and, you know, either he dies because whatever mutation he can't survive anymore, and that mutation kills him. Beautiful. Fantastic. This was not planned beforehand, so this is all ad lib. Or, you know, Darren mutates, and what happens is that mutation causes, you know, the immune system to be able to recognize something about Darren. Something about Darren's different. Dude is wearing a pink birthday hat, right? So the immune cell is going to come along and say, buddy, there's something seriously wrong with you, right? And then he's going to go ahead and he's going to kill Darren. He's going to kill this mutant cell. And he's going to get rid of that cell before it becomes a problem. So what happens is that cell dies. And then the way the immune system works is then it picks up all these little pieces of Darren. And then it shares it with all of its immune cell buddies. And says, hey, listen, if you see any other cells in the body that look something like this, do something about it because they're a problem. We don't want them to be a problem. And that's the sort of the amazing part of the immune system. So what happens in cancer? You know, that? You don't need the hat anymore. But you need to hold this. So what happens in cancer? Cancer, these guys are able to disguise themselves, right? They're able to hide from the immune system, like I said. And you know, a cancer cell doesn't wear a disguise. They're not wearing a face mask or whatever. But they don't use sort of disguises. What they use is they use the immune system's messaging mechanism to hide from the immune cells. And what I mean by that is what I was talking about earlier when Kevin, the immune cell, was walking around telling all his buddies, like, hey, you got to go do something here. You got to kill these cells because they're going to be a problem. There's got to be some checks and balances in the immune system. You okay there? You know, our cancer cell's already starting to die. No, don't die yet, okay? Just hang on. So you know, the immune system has these checks and balances, right? So if Kevin is going out and he's killing all these cells, if there's no way of stopping that immune cell, then things will go haywire. Things will just go nuts, right? And that's what an autoimmune disease is, when the immune system just starts going crazy and starts killing cells sort of at random. So the immune system has these checks and balances. They use these sort of molecular and chemical messages to talk to each other and say, okay, that's enough. It's time for you to chill out. Let's go hang out here. You've done a great job. Have some Gatorade. Relax. Right? So that's what the cancer cell takes advantage of. It takes advantage of those molecular signals and mechanisms that the immune cell understands. So that when this immune cell comes along to this cancer cell, he looks at it and he says, something looks a little strange, but you know what? He's giving me the message that everything's okay. So I'm just going to chill out here, relax, we're buddies. Right? And this is the exciting thing about what we've learned in cancer research, is that this whole interaction with the immune system and the cancer cells. And we're now developing drugs that don't kill the cancer cell, because those are the bad ones, right? Chemotherapy, they kill the cancer cell. Radiation, they kill the cancer cell, but they kill them without any distinguishing factor of, oh, let's just focus on the cancer cell. They kill a whole bunch of cells, or even our healthy ones. What we're developing now is something called immunotherapy, and that's the use of drugs that target the immune cell. Drugs that activate the immune cell to help it recognize this cancer cell so it's able to kill it on its own. So we're using and we're harnessing and reinforcing and enhancing our body's own defense mechanism to kill cancer. So I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, isn't that your miracle drug? If all cancers look like this, can't you just give one drug and kill that cancer, kill all cancers like that? And I mean, that's a good question, but that's not the end of the story here, because when you look at some cancers, this is how they look. And they're very responsive to these, what we call immunotherapies. But if you look at other cancers, and most cancers, it's just a bunch of cancer cells hanging out by themselves here. There are no immune cells anywhere to be found. So if you give this tumor an immunotherapy, there's nothing for that immunotherapy to work on. So that's what my company is doing, OncoSec Medical. We're developing therapies that will do that. We're developing therapies that will bring the immune cells to the cancer. And hopefully it can, when it gets there, it'll be able to recognize the cancer and kill it. And if it can't, then maybe we can combine those drugs, those therapies, where we can bring the immune cell in and then use other immunotherapies that help to activate this immune cell and kill the cancer cell. And that's a really exciting time right now for us in cancer research, for geeks like me. This is really cool, right? Sorry, guys, you guys can go now. Thank you. Round of applause for Kevin and Derek. So this is a really cool time in cancer research. And you know, it's what my chief scientific officer, Robert Pierce, he's a brilliant guy, and he likes to call it a world historical moment in cancer therapy. And it's all kind of cheesy and all that stuff, we laugh at him about it, but he's right. This is a time that we're really making a change, and it's transformative for cancer research and cancer therapy, and it's something we should all be very excited about. But there's a but here, and kind of an elephant in the room, especially for us cancer researchers. And that is, you know, it's one thing to get these drugs approved and to show that they work and how they work, and that's all really exciting, and we have these great scientific and medical breakthroughs. But the problem is that all these recent drugs that have been approved and are now available to the patients, they're extremely expensive. They're crazy, crazy expensive. Let me give you an example. There's a drug that was approved in 2011 for a cancer called metastatic melanoma. It's a skin cancer that's very aggressive, kills a whole bunch of people. And you hear about it every year here in Vancouver with like grads and, you know, sunbathing and trying to get tan before grad and all of that. Don't go sunbathing because you can get melanoma. And it's true, because it's a very deadly disease. So in 2011, this immunotherapy was one of the first ever immunotherapies approved for melanoma. Really changed the face of how we treat cancer. But that drug cost $125,000 for a course of treatment. That's astronomical. Another drug that actually was approved for the same indication, metastatic melanoma, was approved about like 4 weeks ago by the FDA. And that drug was deemed one of the disruptive technologies of the year because it had such great responses in this disease and really is starting to change the paradigm of how we see and treat cancer. But you know, that drug costs $12,500 a month to treat this patient, to treat any patient. And so if a patient takes this drug for a year, it's going to cost them $150,000. Now you're going to say to me, well, how do you put a value on somebody's life? And the truth is you can't, right? If a loved one or you had this disease and you had this drug available to you, you would say, well, I'm going to try and, you know, I'll get the money. I'll get the money so I can get this drug. But the fact is that most people can't. I mean, you don't just pick $125,000 or $150,000 out of the air. Sure, there's crowdsourcing and GoFundMe and all that stuff, but that's the reality is you're not going to be able to pay for that. And the burden of that, especially in places like Canada, even in the United States, the burden of that goes onto the healthcare system. And that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to come up with these drugs and to ask the healthcare system and the patients to pay for these kind of drugs. And I'm not blaming the pharmaceutical industries here. I work for a pharmaceutical industry. What I'm saying is we need to fix this system because it's a broken system. And if we don't, despite the fact we're coming up with all these cool new technologies and all these cool new drugs I just told you about, all these cool, amazing scientific breakthroughs that we have, despite all of that, if we don't fix the system, we will never get these drugs into the hands of the physicians and the patients who need them most. So I'll leave you with that message, and thank you, everybody, for listening.